Hey, y'all. It's the first movie retrospective of 2020. Mm-hmm. That sounds like... It doesn't even sound like real.
Yeah, we're in the 20s now. We're in the roaring 20s. And the first retrospective we're going to do in the roaring 20s is a Crossell movie. Jenny gave me a Christmas present of Big Trouble in Little China.
Look at that fucking box. Isn't that cool as shit?
Yeah, and this is like the deluxe Blu-ray edition that came from... Shout Factory? Shout Factory. It's like my other ones, but for some reason it came real
in like
good.
An extra special, really large, awesome box.
Yes, and it's steelbook.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's 2 discs.
2 discs.
And so much extra stuff on this, you
lots
guys.
Of extra stuff
we have not even been able to watch all of it because there's so much of it. We watched quite a bit of it, though.
I had seen Big Trouble in Little China when it came out. I watched it on VHS. I didn't get to see it in the theater.
Yeah.
And I remember enjoying it, but I also remember thinking it was kind of like a cheesy Raiders of the Lost Ark knockoff. I liked it, but then I kind of quickly forgot about it. But having seen it again in the format you're supposed to see it in, with the right aspect ratio and
all the nice colors.
All the nice colors and everything. Man, it was good. It was a cool flick. Real cool flick. And I understand it a lot better now than I did when I was a kid. When it came out.
I feel like, and this happens, poor John Carpenter, this happens with a lot of John Carpenter movies, is that the movie comes out, I mean, Big Trouble in Little China came out in 1986, and it was notoriously a very large bomb. I believe it was pulled from theaters. I think we were watching we watched an old interview with John Carpenter and one with Kurt Russell and some of the other people that had worked on the movie, and I think that they pulled it out of the theaters after 3 or 4 days, just because it wasn't doing so well. Because I think it cost between $20 and $25 million to make, and it only made $11 million back.
Yeah, I can understand why it bombed, though. I mean,
I can too.
It was way ahead
in that time period.
It was way ahead of its time.
A lot of John Carpenter's movies were it takes like several decades for them to get appreciated.
What this was giving you is that they were bringing Hong Kong theater to the United States in an American movie. And it was very much like a kung fu flick.
Oh, yeah.
Before kung fu flicks were cool.
Yeah, I mean, there was, like, a lot of people watched them, like,
subculture
42nd Street and stuff like that. You know what I mean? A lot of people were into those, but it wasn't, this was like, this might be one of the first mainstream movies that actually attempted to do, like, a Hong Kong theater type of movie. Yeah. In that type of format, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would say that this is kind of like... basically Mortal Kombat or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's like, that's the tone.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, I mean, Mortal Kombat swiped a couple characters from this.
They ripped off a lot of this.
And, I mean, they didn't rip it off. They were homaging it because they did, like, say that that's where they got the character from and everything like that, but...
They did kind of have a ninja craze for a while, but like I said, that wasn't enough for a full... big budget movie. And this was actually a kind of a big budget movie for
itself. Like I said. And it's weird because I didn't realize this at the time. I didn't see this in the theater. I actually ended up seeing this on cable a couple of times. Interestingly, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit in a minute, there was like some kind of rivalry between this movie and The Golden Child because they came out the same year. Yeah. Now, I will say that at the time... I liked The Golden Child better.
So
I saw it a bunch more times. But having seen both of the movies recently, I like this one better. I think I still like The Golden Child, but I now think this one is like a much better movie.
It's a bigger movie.
It definitely is a more ambitious movie for sure. In the sense that...
A lot more special effects.
I can get why, like I said, this is a movie that... I don't think it would be hard to sell nowadays. And I will tell you that, Dwayne Johnson, his production company, they are doing, I hear that they're doing a sequel to this. Initially, they were talking about doing a remake and that, The Rock was going to play the Kurt Russell character, but everyone was like, what the fuck? Nobody can be Jack Burton except for Kurt Russell. Yeah. And he's like, no. He's like, it's going to be a continuation of the story. It's a sequel. He's like, I'm not going to replace Kurt Russell, obviously, because that's that character. But they're going to just, set it in the same universe, I guess. Yeah. But I think the initial conception of this movie, and this movie had a really, really troubled production history, which I didn't realize until I was watching all the extras and shit about it. Apparently, the two guys who wrote it first, Gary Goldman and David Weinstein, this was their first screenplay. Now, their initial conception, they wanted to do something, and apparently this is a whole subgenre called Weird West or Weird Western, where they wanted to set in the 1880s in San Francisco and it was going to combine like a classic Western with some comedy, but also Chinese mysticism, because they thought those ideas would like kind of be really cool together. So originally the Jack Burton character was conceived as a cowboy who rides into town and encounters like all the, like the story about Lo Pan, I think, is pretty much the only thing that is the same from the original script. Like the guy that had the curse, and he was like, he doesn't have a body, I guess. He's not a ghost exactly, but he's kind of like,
he's a ghost.
Yeah, he's like
a Chinese ghost.
He was cursed to be like incorporeal or whatever, where it's like he doesn't have a body, so he wants a body. Like he can have a body sometimes, but it's like a crappy old one that's like that's all like fucked up, and he's like in a wheelchair and stuff. But it's like, so his whole quest throughout the movie is that he has to marry and sacrifice a green-eyed woman.
Yeah.
And then the demon, whose name is, what's the demon's name? I can't even remember.
I forgot.
Chang Dai or something like that. The demon will give him a body, like give him his body back. And apparently he's going to be immortal or something like that. So this is a complicated story.
The Chinese ghost is kind of like a vampire too. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? With immortality and also like a sorcerer.
Yeah.
Because he can do a bunch of sorcery. It's a pretty cool flick. It's it was ahead of its time. I can understand why it failed though.
I can as well.
It's not the movie that the studio wanted.
Yeah.
The studio wanted basically they wanted Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
And what they got instead was a kung fu version of Ghostbusters.
Pretty much.
It's got, the tone is like Ghostbusters. So
it is kind of.
Yeah, like the first Ghostbusters. It's like Ghostbusters, Mortal Kombat, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and a kung fu flick.
Yeah, like all mashed up together.
And Indiana Jones.
And it's funny.
And it's funny. And Krusell does a good job. You know, in Escape from New York, you know, when he did Snake Plissken, he was channeling what's his name? Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
You can tell it's Clint Eastwood. I see this one, and he's supposed to be a cowboy. They wanted him to be a cow. He's channeling John Wayne, and he's going and doing an over-the-top John Wayne. He's just American as fuck. I mean, he's just hyper-Americanisms. And the Carpenter's, okay, it was going to be kind of a situation like in, Raiders of the Lost Ark, not Raiders of the Lost Ark, but Temple of Doom, where you had Indy and you had a little Chinese sidekick named, Short Round. Or kind of like, the Green Hornet and Kato. Going to be something kind of like that. But it's kind of odd. Carpenter didn't really want to do that because the entire cast is Chinese pretty much.
Pretty much. There's only a few, like, non-Asian actors in this.
Yeah, and it's kind of this white savior fucking element to where
he was trying to turn that on its head was what he was doing.
Where a white guy shows up and kills all the monsters and all the ghosts for the Chinese people and becomes
They're
a
like,
hero.
oh, thank you, white man.
Yeah, thank you, white man. It would have been funny. It would have been odd as fuck for that. So they have to get that shit done, but it's got to be entertaining. It can't look that corny, Which I guess Temple of Doom pulled it off. They, because like Indy shows up, single-handedly saves all the Indians from the thuggies. Yeah. But that's the movie about a hero. It's a hero tale. That's what the studio wanted. Carpenter kind of flipped it on its head, where you got this John Wayne type character, and then there's a little Chinese guy. But the little Chinese guy is the one that's really doing
He's actually the hero.
He's actually the one doing all the heavy lifting.
But Jack Burton's character, Jack Burton thinks he's the hero.
Jack Burton's trying to be the hero, but it's the first time he's doing all this shit.
Yeah, and he doesn't know anything. I mean, he only gets involved in this entire situation with the sex traffickers and the demon guy and everything like that. He only gets involved because him and Wang were playing a game, and Wang lost a bet, and so he's like, well, I'm gonna come with you to make sure you give me my money, ha ha ha. And then Wang's like, oh, I gotta go to the airport and pick up my girlfriend, or my fiance. And so while they're at the airport, a girl gets kidnapped by sex slaves, and Jack Burton intervenes and stuff like that. So Jack is coming into this big milieu of like Chinese mythology and like two warring gangs and like a demon guy and everything, and he has no fucking clue what the hell is going on.
He's a fucking truck driver.
He's like just this driving the Pork Chop Express. And he just like brings pigs into Chinatown like to be slaughtered. So
so he's kind of the comedic relief. He's kind of the sidekick, really. But he is heroic. He does pull it off. Yeah. But but by just being an asshole and not giving up and. Yeah. He is brave, but this is the first time he's doing any of this shit. He's trying to play it off.
He's basically, and both John Carpenter and Kurt Russell said this, they thought they were very amused, like, coming up with stuff that this character could do, because they're like, he thinks he's the hero, but he's really, like, he's a blowhard, and he's also, like, a little bit of an idiot. Yeah. But he has, like, he is brave, and he does, like, step in and help his friends. He's not, like, trying to get out of it or anything, but... he's never really shot a gun before. He's never really fought before. So he's like all this stuff where they're trying to like, there's this fucking great scene at the end, like during the, one of the big main kung fu fights. And Kurt Russell was like, man, it's like, I can't really do like all that, fighting and stuff like that. He's like, how about if I get knocked out like 2 seconds into the fight that he's just unconscious for most of it?
When he wakes up, he finishes it.
So it's like, so that was like his idea. He's like, so he just like shoots into the ceiling and like the cement falls on his head and it knocks him out like for the, the thing of the fight. So I like that they were kind of like trying to subvert this trope where... Because Kurt Russell was like, when he initially, I don't think he was actually the first choice for the role, because John Carpenter was, not really the first choice. Like I said, the two guys that wrote the original script, someone bought the script, but then they said, well, I don't really like it. They tried to redo it, and they're like, it's not working. I don't want it to be a period piece. I don't want it to be set in the 1880s because that's, like, affecting everything. So, this other writer who was, like, a script doctor, I can't remember his name, but he was the same guy that directed Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, and he basically retooled the entire script and set it in modern Chinatown. Like I said, the only thing he kept was, like, the Lopan backstory about his curse and the demon and everything, and that was, like, all that they kept, and he turned Jack Burton into a truck driver. But there was like a thing with like the Writers Guild, and it's like the original writers were mad. They're like, well, we want writing credit even though everything had been changed, because they have rules where you can't like have somebody write it and then take the whole thing and rewrite the whole concept and then go, oh well, you guys don't get any credit. You can't really do that. So I think the original two guys got writing credit, but then the script doctor guy got like attributed credit and shit like that. Now John Carpenter, interestingly, he had actually been offered to direct The Golden Child, but he turned it down. However, he's like, the weird thing is that we're working on this script, and then The Golden Child was also kind of floating around, and they were working on that script, and he's like, what are the odds of like two action movies that are, I mean, they're not exactly the same, but they're two like action movies with like a Western person like going into like with all this Asian mysticism, and they don't really know what's going on, and they're kind of like wisecracking and stuff. So he's like, it was similar enough that they had to push the production of Big Trouble in Little China like way up, because they said, we want this out before The Golden Child, so it doesn't look like we ripped it off. So it actually ended up coming out 5 months before that. But like I said, the weird thing, the special effects in this, I have to say, it's the same guy. It's Richard Edlund, I think his name is. They're real good, He did Boss Film Studios or whatever his thing. He used to work for Industrial Light and Magic, and then he went and started his own business. He did the first Ghostbusters, and so you can tell it's the same effects team.
It looks like Ghostbusters.
I mean, the effects in this, when we were watching it on Blu-ray, you said they look like they've been cleaned up, and I don't think that they have.
Well, I saw it on VHS, and on VHS it looks like shit.
Yeah.
Okay, just the way it was, the old TVs that we had and everything.
Yeah.
And I never saw what it was supposed to look like in the theater. But you see this thing on Blu-ray, man, on a good TV.
The effects look really good.
It looks really good.
It's really good. Especially really like all the light work, like all the lightning. Yeah. The one scene where Egg Shen, the magician, who's played by James Hong, who's fucking great. He was also he's been in a bunch of John Carpenter movies.
It's got Chinese monsters in it. It's got everything.
Yeah, there's like a monster that looks kind of like fucking Bigfoot. There's like this floating... the head with like all these eyeballs in it,
kind of like a beholder from Dungeons and Dragons.
That like floats around and stuff, and they made that all like with puppeteering and stuff.
There's a weird looking sewer monster that pops out for a second. Some of this shit you only see it for a few seconds.
Yeah, that was kind of a shame, because especially that one sewer monster, it's like we were watching some of the extras, and they were talking about you would see like all the work they went into like sculpting this really cool looking monster, and you saw it for literally a second and a half.
The movie, I think, would have made a lot of money, and it would have been remembered if it didn't have two main things going against it. One, when Carpenter screened the movie for the studio execs, they were fucking furious. It wasn't the movie that they wanted.
They didn't really get the humor either. They didn't get that it was supposed to be funny.
They wanted Temple of Doom. That's what they wanted, okay? And this whole humor aspect, and they just didn't like it. And evidently, they talk about it in the extras. No names were mentioned, the person who said, but Carpenter and a studio executive got in a big fucking fight right there in the theater, and that studio exec fucking sunk this movie. And he sunk it by not putting enough money towards promotion.
Yeah.
And they gave it a kind of a fucked up poster that didn't.
Yeah, Kurt Russell was talking about that. He's like, here's the thing. The poster was
like on purpose to be kind of fucked up. Now here's we can go back to the second. Here's another thing. The reason why they fucked up this movie. Somebody thought it was a good idea to go to San Francisco and approach the Chinese community and let them know about this movie, and that try to say that it wasn't racist. And they did that in public, and that's not going to work, because all it's going to take is one person to say it's racist, and that's who's going to get. And it was coverage.
Essentially one person that had a big campaign. I don't think anyone else really cared about it.
Nobody gave a shit, and the reason why nobody gives a shit is they don't know anything about the Chinese. In China, it's illegal to show anything about mysticism and ghosts. The Chinese, especially like the CCP, tries to fucking stamp out all mysticism from fucking movies. The Chinese that are here in San Francisco don't give a shit about that. There was no reason to even talk to them, because the only thing that resulted was negative press. Had they said nothing, it wouldn't have had the racist
they probably should have. Like, I can understand.
Just released that bitch.
Well, because the thing about it is that you would think of all the movies to complain about, this one would seem like really low on the list. Because
it had almost all Chinese cast.
It was almost all Asian cast. Yeah. The Asians were the heroes. Yep. The white guy was pretty much
kind of a clownish kind of
guy.
Yeah,
he was heroic too, but he was kind of like bumbling and kind of an idiot, and he was obviously like the sidekick type of character.
Yeah.
So
the sidekick and didn't know it.
And didn't know that he was the sidekick. And that's like it, and Kurt Russell said specifically that that's how he wanted to play him, is like as someone who thinks he's the hero when he's actually the sidekick.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think what ended up happening to, I mean, there was a lot of reasons why I think this movie wasn't, and this happens, like I said, with a lot of John Carpenter movies, like of whatever genre. It's always kind of like they come out, like everyone's just kind of like meh, or like people don't go see it or they don't get it. But then like, 10, 20 years later, it finds its audience and it's like has a huge cult following. And that's exactly what happened with this one. I think the premise was pretty weird. Although the Golden Child premise was pretty weird too.
Weird,
and it's
by
like
today's standards.
Not by today's standards, but by 1986 standards. Because there was not only the combination of like kind of an action movie with Chinese mysticism, which hadn't really been done either at all or hadn't been done all that much. There was also the strange humor. The kind of inversion of the hero sidekick characters, the whole thing between, and particularly between Kurt Russell's character and Kim Cattrall's character, where John Carpenter, I think, told them Howard Hawks the shit out of it, because they were like just real fast talking, like it was like from the 30s. And I think a lot of people didn't really get that either. You know what I mean? And also what happened too was that 1986 was the same year that Aliens came out, and it actually came out only a couple weeks after this, and there was a huge media blitz, and this was the same studio that was putting Aliens out. So I think what ended up happening, weirdly, before this movie came out, like the test screenings that they did were really positive. Like all the members of the public that saw it were like really into it. So I think at first they were thinking it was going to be like a big blockbuster. And Kurt Russell, like in the interview on The Thing, he was saying that even when he was doing the rounds of like talk shows and stuff, people were like, oh, how's it feel to be in a movie that's going to come out and it's going to be this big blockbuster? He's like, but then like as the release date got closer and closer, he's like, I didn't see any TV spots for it. I didn't really see. He's like, in the poster, like the painting on the poster is nice, but one, it doesn't really look like Kurt Russell. Two, he's like, it's cool that they put me really big, like on the poster and everything, but I wasn't like a humongous star at that time. So it's not like I was like the main selling point. They probably should have like, played up another aspect of it, maybe.
Should have played up the villains and the monsters.
Yeah, or something like, it should have been more like that, so you would kind of know what kind of movie it was.
And the poster should have been dark. It shouldn't have been a lighthearted kind of like...
Even though it is kind of a wacky...
Should have been more like a Ghostbusters poster.
That's kind of what I think that they should have done. So, I'm not saying they did that on purpose. I am saying that probably... After the studio saw the final cut and everything like that, they're probably like, yeah, we don't really get it. It's like Aliens is coming out soon. Maybe we should just take the budget quietly that we were going to spend. They were only going to spend $2 or $3 million on marketing for this movie. And John Carpenter was like, I don't even know what the fuck they did with that because I didn't hardly see any marketing for this before it came out. And I think they quietly just said, hey, let's move that over to Aliens and give that an extra $3 million. And I'm not shitting on Aliens, obviously, because Aliens that's a fucking masterpiece. Classic, right, But, so I think it suffered too from being in the same studio as Aliens and that being like the big thing that they were thinking was going to make money that year.
So it basically ended up being something that was almost kind of like something directed DVD. Mm-hmm. And this movie didn't really look all that great on directed DVD. Fuck you. What DVD didn't exist then? It was like direct to VHS.
Yeah.
So people saw it at Blockbuster. And it really didn't look that good on the movies or on the TV screens of the day. CRT televisions just didn't have the definition. They were fuzzy, and by today's standards. So the movie just didn't have the hype behind it.
Yeah.
That Aliens had and Ghostbusters had, and it just was forgotten.
Yeah, and it's
it's unjust. It was a good movie.
Yeah, and like I said, over the years,
like
many of John Carpenter's movies, it definitely got a humongous cult following. So much so that it got a video game, it got a board game, it got a card game. It has nowadays, just from a couple years ago, it has a whole comic book series. One of which is a crossover with Jack Burton and Snake Plissken, which I actually went to see if they had any left, and they're all sold out. As far as I could tell. But they also did a series that's called Old Man Jack, his continuing things and everything. And I think we mentioned it earlier, but the one character that's in there, there's those three characters called the Three Storms, rain, thunder, and lightning, or whatever.
Where Raiden came from.
Yeah, that's where Raiden from Mortal Kombat, with the big straw hat and the lightning coming out of his hands.
Yeah,
and
his
also
mouth and his eyes.
Yeah, and I think there's a villain too in Mortal Kombat that was taken from the villain in this movie as well. When he's in his incarnation with all his really cool shit on.
I think the multi-hand guy. I think
he
also a sorcerer.
So the makers of Mortal Kombat and have come out as saying that they were homaging Big Trouble in Little China with these characters in Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. So I was watching this one, I think they're called Off the Shelf reviews. It's these two British guys that just sit on a couch and talk about movies for 40 minutes, kind of like we do. And the one of them had a shirt, and he just loves this movie. This is one of his favorite John Carpenter movies. And he had a shirt that had Kurt Russell on it with the gun pointed up, and underneath it said it's all in the reflexes.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so cute. I kind of want it.
All right. Yeah. She mentioned the gun. I'm gonna have to talk about the gun.
Yeah, let's talk about
that. The gun is an Intertech 9, which was a fucking popular cheese ball assault pistol is what they called them back in the day, back in the late 80s. It was originally supposed to be an open bolt, fully automatic submachine gun that they were going to sell to the law enforcement in Europe, but they never really could get a buyer, so they kind of dumbed it down a little bit, made it bolt forward, with hammer. And made it a semi-auto pistol here in the United States. You could get them for cheap back in those days, $200.
Yeah.
And they weren't really all that known for reliability. They had problems. They jammed every now and then. Things broke on them. But that actually perfectly made it up with that Jack character. Because
it did, yeah.
It is something trying to be something that it isn't. But it did kind of work. And that's why, they gave him that pistol, and that pistol did not have a stellar reputation.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's why. Maybe whoever decided to put that particular prop in there was
what's something that's real showy, but it's not that great. It's kind of shitty.
If somebody did that on purpose, that was pretty genius.
The Tech 9. Yeah, give him a Tech 9. Yeah. If
he's and he doesn't really know. He's pointing at people's faces and stuff.
If a pistol could have a mullet, it would be a Tech 9 would have a mullet. All right, that's what that is.
That's another T-shirt. If a pistol could have a mullet,
it would be a Tech 9.
You could have a little pistol with.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
That's what it'd be like.
Another thing. I have to mention this because ever since we watched this, we rewatched this movie a couple nights ago, and ever since then, the fucking theme song has been stuck in my head. It will not be dislodged.
Yeah.
And I have
Good
to
music
say,
in this movie.
It is. Like, the theme song, which is just called Big Trouble in Little China, was actually performed by John Carpenter's band, the Coupe de Villes. And I believe that is John Carpenter singing. There was a really, really cheesy music video made for this. It's delightful. I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube. Yeah, and it's like, I'm pretty sure it's John Carpenter singing in the video, even though I wouldn't have guessed that was what his singing voice sounded like. But the other two guys in the band, I didn't realize this. The other two guys in the Coupe de Villes are Nick Castle, who was the guy that played Michael Myers, and he also co-wrote Escape from New York. And then the third guy is Tommy Lee Wallace, the same guy that directed Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Fright Night 2, and the It miniseries from 1990. So that was like his all-star band. Right. But they did like a lot of songs for this, and
I just thought just the regular score was real good.
It is, yeah.
You know, it's Carpenter. Well, Carpenter, you can tell when Carpenter's, scoring his own movies.
He has a very distinctive style. And he said that
sounds good,
he said that specifically, he's like, when I was doing the score for this, he's like, so many movies like that had Chinese actors or had like kind of a Chinese setting or a Chinatown setting, he's like he's like they always use what he called quote unquote rinky tink chop suey music.
Yeah, rinky tink.
And he's like, I really didn't want to do that.
No.
So he just went with his like regular kind of score. And it actually does serve the movie very well.
Yeah, it's good.
I will say that it's like this movie, you really kind of, because it's edited really quickly and it's like kind of, like I said, the story, like the backstory of the demon and everything is kind of complicated. So you really have to listen to like everyone's conversations, or you will just have no idea what's going on. You'll just like have people, there's people running around.
Yeah.
There's like guys with like shooting lightning out of their hands and
but
shit
what's
like
great
that.
about this movie is that because of the edit, because of how cool it looks, and just everything that happens in each scene, it's action packed pretty much.
Yeah.
And the acting, the over the top acting.
It is very over the top.
You don't really have to pay attention to the movie that much.
You don't. It's just like a fun watch.
And fucking because you can just drink and watch the movie and just laugh.
You're basically like they're just fighting the magic guys. To save the girls.
Because the tone is not serious. It's very kind of bonkers and over the top, and it's just a fun movie, real fun. So it's not something that you sit there and go, what does he mean by that? No, just.
Well, like I said, if you want to know like what the backstory is, it's kind of like a comment. You just have to like listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention too that like, the prologue of the movie, like with Egg Shen talking to that lawyer about what a hero Jack Burton was and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was tacked on.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, initially the movie was just supposed to start with Jack Burton coming down the highway in his truck, like on the CB or whatever. But the studio made him put that in there because they're like, well, we can't have a movie where, like, the white guy isn't the hero.
Right, yeah.
Where the Chinese guy is the hero.
Right, yeah.
So he's like, so he had to come up with, like, some scene to tack on the beginning to, like, make the studio happy, and they still weren't happy.
I think what the deal was is I think the executives thought that whether or not Jack was the hero or not is in question in this movie. And they said he's got to definitely be the heroic draw of the movie.
Yeah.
They knew the demographics. You know what I mean? They were trying to make money. So they tacked those things on the front, but they were talking about how brave he was, in retrospect, which adds to the movie, if you ask me.
It is kind of funny, but it's funnier like funnier. When you know
the story behind it.
Why that was just because it seems a little try hard.
Well, it wasn't the movie that they wanted.
Yeah, it's just funny, but
that's not the movie the studio wanted.
And it's funny that you get Egg Shen at the beginning, like in the contest of the movie, like talking about how awesome Jack Burton is, even though Wang Chi was the one that did most of the shit.
Yeah. But them adding that in the very beginning because the studio wanted it made it even more ridiculous.
Yeah.
So they actually,
in a way, maybe it kind of like worked out because his character was supposed to be, like I said, he is a heroic character. He's brave. He does rescue people and he does help out his friends. Like I said, he doesn't really. He's reluctant at first because he just wants his truck back because his truck gets stolen. Yeah. But he does actually want to help his friend because Wang Chi is his friend.
He's a hero.
So he is heroic.
He's a hero,
But it's kind of like he's kind of stumbled into some shit he doesn't understand.
Yeah, it's over his head.
But he's in over his head, but he's like just really cocky and he's just like, I'm gonna sort this shit out.
He's being American as fuck.
That's
what a good American man's gonna do. He's gonna fucking bullshit his way through it and like John Wayne would. he shoots and kills that guy. Goes, what? He says, you killed that guy. Is that your first guy you ever killed? And he goes, fuck no, hell no.
Yeah. Is that the first guy you ever plugged? And he's
like, hell no.
Of course not.
Of course not.
So it's just, he's got like such great like comedic timing in this. Just some of the shit, like when he busts open that one door and there's all those bad guys back there and he just closes it real quick and it's like, I think we might be trapped. You know what I mean? It's just like all that really funny shit.
So it's just a good movie. It's just fun. It looks great. It's held up. If you can find it, watch it.
Yeah, I mean, John Carpenter.
You can buy it, man. This right here.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. Yeah, and I think that came out in 2013, 2014, something like that. But yeah, it's Shout Factory / Scream Factory. Yeah. It's fairly reasonably priced. It was a little bit expensive, but not really for the
They're probably different because the other ones didn't come in that big case.
Yeah.
And the ones that I bought that didn't come in that big case were probably around $30.
That one was, I think, 50 or 60.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
Something like that.
So this was probably top notch.
And it's like, now I'm wondering if all the other John Carpenter movies, if they have a version that has like that big ass box.
Maybe.
Because that big ass box is pretty badass.
They never sent me a big ass box before.
I know, I've never seen. That's why I was shocked that I was like, well, of all movies, of all John Carpenter's movies to have that, like Big Trouble in Little China seemed like an odd one.
Yeah, you'd think it would be like The Thing.
The Thing, you would think. Yeah. Or Halloween.
Yeah, or...
maybe there is a version with like that. Now I'm going to have to look it up. But yeah, so I got him that for Christmas, so we decided to... review the movie because I feel like this is one, like I said, it's gotten a lot of appreciation now, but at the time it was kind of shit on, got pulled out of theaters.
It was 10 years ahead of its time.
It was way ahead of its time, and it's like, if you want to see a John Carpenter kung fu movie, this is your opportunity if you ever wanted to see that. So definitely check it out.